What's up again, everybody? Let's review more cards. It's Hall of Doom time. Hall of Doom Base of Operations. A 3-cost fist action that says your Legion of Doom character dice get +1/+1 until the end of the turn. 1/3 of the time, so on the burst and double burst face, instead your Legion of Doom character dice get +2/+2. This feels balanced, if a little on the weak side. The issue here is that the Legion of Doom character pool is limited to exactly what is in this set, of which there are a few that I would actively want to combo this with. The 3-cost Black Manta that gives himself a +2 attack buff goes well with this. So does the 2-cost Parasite that can share his stats with someone else. That 3-card combo gives you a pretty beefy little Black Manta. That being said, it's not the most powerful of cards in the world. It's decent for its cost at 3. It seems well designed. It's not too crazy. It's a C. Hall of Doom Headquarters is a 2-cost fist action that says at the end of this turn, you may field a Legion of Doom character die from your used pile at level 1. This is a great action for 2 energy. It gives you a way to immediately use one of the cards that you bought this turn, and many of the characters that this can pull from used don't care if they're fielded during or at the end of the turn. This can easily pull things like the 3-cost Scarecrow that we'll talk about a little later, the 4-cost Joker that we'll talk about a little later, or any of the control pieces that we find in this set, because most of them are Legion of Doom characters. If you think about it, this can essentially be considered like Rip Hunter's Chalkboard or like a cheaper Bifrost. With Chalkboard, you are paying an energy to prep a purchase, which you're then going to need to pay to field at that next turn when you roll it. With this, you're paying 2 energy and using the action to field something that you're buying for free. With Bifrost, you are paying 4, using the action, and fielding a character to field for free from used. With Bifrost, you are paying 4 and then using the action, and then fielding one of your own characters you've rolled that turn to field something from your used pile for free. With this, you're paying 2 to do the same thing without having to field a character from reserve that you rolled this turn. The only stipulation for both of those sort of comparisons is that it has to be a Legion of Doom character, whereas the other 2 could apply to any characters. And that is a pretty important stipulation because, again, the Legion of Doom character card pool is pretty small. If you're playing this in set, this card is super good. If any of the Legion of Doom character control pieces catch on, this card could be a good little handcuffed to bring that card out pretty quickly. It seems balanced because it only applies to Legion characters, and it's strong when you use it with them. I'm giving it a C+. Lex Luthor, Leader in World Politics, a 4-drop shield character, double villain affiliated, 014-115-126 stat line, and his card reads, while Lex Luthor is active, your opponents cannot purchase more than 1 action die and 1 character die per turn. So now that the infamous Yuan-Ti Pureblood super rare has been banned, this card may appear less useful, but there are always going to be aggro teams that want to load up for bear and swarm you down. This slows that just a little bit. Lately, I've been seeing some people playing around with the Poxwalker Yuan-Ti team-up team combination. Those are predicated on loading up your dice bag with just a bunch of characters that are going to swarm at you, hit you hard because you buff them up a lot. Managing to get this out on turn 3 could help curb that. Perhaps not the perfect control piece, but certainly one to consider, especially because we have so many good villain synergies out there, and this just kind of fits right on there. This is a C+. Lex Luthor, Man of More Than Ambition, is also a 4-drop shield character. His ability reads, while Lex Luthor is active, when you use an action die, draw a die, and if it's a villain character die, you prep it. Otherwise, you place it in your used pile. So either this is ramp if you hit a villain character die, or it's churn if you hit anything else. It's definitely an ability that is meant for casual and limited play, because in order to get this to work, you'd be looking to buy and field this, and then use it alongside some high-quality action dice and some other villains that you've purchased. Generally, action dice are used for ramp already, so in essence, this is either a fine in-set ramp option when you're playing limited, or it's some weird win more ramp option in a more competitive scene where you're already using things like Investigation, or Throne Brick, or even the new Power Almighty. Basically, any of those action-based ramps. If it's already on your team, then this just kind of adds to that in the form of churn. Unfortunately, it can also hit those dice, so if you've bought multiple Investigations or Power Almighties or Throne Bricks and you accidentally pull that die out of the bag instead of a villain or instead of a sidekick, then that goes to use. You don't get to choose to put it back. So I give this card overall a D+. It's better in limited formats where ramp options are a little bit more sparse and you'd be running a lot more villains because you know exactly what you're drafting from exactly this set, something like that. But it's worse in constructed formats where so many more ramp options work so much better than this. Next up is Martian Manhunter, a Manhunter. 6-cost Shield Justice League character, a 134, 146, 268 stat line. This card has strike, and it's also got the text that says Martian Manhunter can only be blocked by 2 or more character dice. So here's a 6-drop that gains Overcrush for a turn with strike, but then misses out on a little bit of that Overcrush damage because it forces your opponent to double block. Assuming that they do block it, then maybe he's like 2 for 1ing some characters, which is kind of nice. You can also view the second ability as a way for him to be more easily KO'd, thus setting up another strike trigger. If 2 things have to block him, then the combined damage he'll take from both of them would be more likely for him to KO than if you just had to engage with one thing or let him go through unblocked. Speaking of, if they let him go through unblocked because they don't have 2 characters or they don't want him to KO something important, then he sneaks by for like 5, 6, or 8 damage. I don't hate this. Like, to me, the second ability actually kind of helps the strike keyword. In limited and casual formats, this is not a bad card to pick up as a beater. It's like a solid C. Martian Manhunter, Endless Abilities is up next. It's another 6-drop shield character, same stat line and affiliations. This one's sick. While Martian Manhunter is active, while an opponent has an active villain character die, your character dice gain Overcrush. This card is good. Like, this card is super underratedly good. And not even just in set, which it is. Think about all of the villains in modern teams out there. Shriek, Blob, Scarlet Witch, Madam Mask, Collector, Nobby, anything from this set and anything coming from the upcoming X-Men set, there are a ton of triggers for this card, and if it does go off, then giving all of your character dice Overcrush is ridiculous to deal with for your opponent, especially if they're well statted like the stats in this set. The drawback is that you have to rely on your opponent to bring a villain, and if they don't, then this card is kind of like a dead card on your team, unless you fixed that by pairing it with the rare Danger Room that makes every die a villain in the field. That's a 2-card combo that guarantees that all of your things get Overcrush. This is a win con to keep your eye on. I give it a B-. Now let's talk about Metallo. This is Cybernetic Body, a 5-cost Bolt character, double villain affiliated, a 144, 155, 266 stat line, and his ability says, while Metallo is active, when your opponent fields a Justice League character die, draw a die. If it's a villain character die, you may field it at level 2, otherwise place it in your used pile or your bag. This is a good in-set ability for a 5-drop in a set predicated on Justice League versus Legion of Doom characters. It's worth picking up early in drafts to build a team around and go towards the villain side of things. It's worth reaching for 5. It'll trigger enough in that format to make it work. It's pretty solid. In Constructed, it remains to be seen if Justice League teams are synergistic enough to cut into the competitive space, but even if they did, there are faster ramp or churn options in competitive than this. So this is good in draft and in set, and it's not so good in Constructed. If we balance those 2 ratings out that we could possibly give it, this comes out to a dead middle C. The next Metallo is Heart of Kryptonite, a 6-drop variant that says, while Metallo is active, your Legion of Doom character dice are free to field, and Justice League character dice cost 1 more to field. So this feels like the villain version of the Batman that buffs your Justice League characters and makes them 1 less to field, except it feels a lot worse. It makes some sense in set, though there are a lot better options for a team slot, and it makes very little sense in constructed formats. This could have easily been printed as a 5-drop and be a lot more sensible, but the fact that it's a 6-drop and makes your opponents just a little bit harder to field and your stuff free to field, doesn't even give them a +1/+1 buff, makes it so much worse than that Batman. This is a D. And the final card in this video is Metallo John Corbin, a 5-drop again. This one says, while Metallo is active, when you field a sidekick character die, you may pay a bolt, and if you do, deal 1 damage to target opponent. This was one of those cards that got me really excited at first, and then the more that I thought about how it works, the more I realize that it's not as good as I had hoped. So for each sidekick that you field, you could pay a bolt and deal a damage to the opponent. That is kind of cool, but it gets far too expensive to feel functional if you're planning on doing that multiple times a turn. If you're fielding actual naturally rolled sidekicks and not allies, and you're also paying bolts each turn, then you're just not doing anything else, and there's a point where you just run out of sidekicks to field and bolts to pay. There are some interesting combo ideas with this and like Instant War that are worth messing around with, and it could be a fun casual piece to mess with, but eventually I feel like you're just gonna move on to find stronger things. It's playable, but only about a C-. So there you have it. There's a bunch more cards rated and done with. Let me know in the comments below which ratings you agree with, which you disagree with, and which of these cards is your favorite. I loved reading the comments from the previous video, so keep them coming. As always, thanks for watching.